Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about something that many parents and educators struggle to understand: sensory processing and how it affects children with autism. You may have heard of the term sensory processing, but why do children with autism seem to have such a hard time with it? Sensory processing refers to the way our brain receives and interprets information from the world around us, whether that's a sound, a smell, a texture, or even our own body movements. But for children with autism, sensory processing can be a challenge. Their brains don't always process these sensations in the same way others do. So what happens when sensory processing goes wrong? That's exactly what we're going to discuss today. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of why children with autism may struggle with sensory processing and how we can help them navigate these challenges. Plus, I'll share real-life stories of children who, with the right therapies, made significant progress. Now, let's begin. Let's start with a quick overview of what sensory processing actually is. We all receive sensory information from the world through our five senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. In addition to that, there are also two other senses that are super important. First, there's proprioception, which tells us where our body is in space. Think about knowing where your hands and feet are without looking. And then there is vestibular, which helps with balance and movement. Think about how you can walk without falling. All of these senses work together to help us navigate the world and make sense of everything around us. When sensory processing works well, it means we can tune into what's important and filter out what is not. For instance, when you're in a crowded coffee shop, you can focus on the person you're talking to, ignoring the background noise of the other conversations, the clinking of cups, and the music playing in the background. But for children with autism, this process doesn't always go smoothly. Their brains might not know how to filter out unnecessary sensory information, or they might be too sensitive or not sensitive enough to certain sensations. This can lead to some pretty challenging behaviors, and that is what we're going to explore. Now that we know what sensory processing is, let's dive deeper into why children with autism face such difficulties with it. There are two common sensory challenges that children with autism experience: sensory overload and sensory seeking. Now let's break those down. What is sensory overload? This is when the brain becomes overwhelmed with too much sensory input. Think about being in a concert or a busy shopping mall. It's loud, there are bright lights, and people moving around. It can be overwhelming for anyone, but for children with autism, that overload can be unbearable. For instance, let me tell you about Sarah, a young girl I worked with a while ago. Sarah was around 6 years old, and when she was in a busy classroom with fluorescent lights and the noise of other kids, she would become visibly distressed. She'd start crying, covering her ears, and sometimes even scream to drown out the noise. It wasn't that she was being difficult. It was just that her brain could not process all that sensory input at once. Over time, we worked with her and her school on creating a sensory-friendly environment in the classroom. We used noise-canceling headphones and dimmed the lights, which helped Sarah feel more at ease and allowed her to focus. What is sensory seeking? Now, not all children with autism experience sensory overload. Some kids actually seek sensory input, trying to fill a need for stimulation that their brain craves. These are called sensory-seeking behaviors, and they can look very different. For example, some children love to spin in circles, jump repeatedly, or chew on things like clothes or toys because they're craving that sensory feedback. Take a boy named Tamor, for example. Tamor was a 7-year-old who had sensory-seeking behaviors. He loved squeezing tight objects, whether it was his weighted blanket or a heavy cushion. He would become very upset if he didn't get that deep pressure sensory input. When he wasn't able to get his fix of pressure, he would act out, become frustrated, or even shut down. But once we introduced activities like deep pressure therapy, where he would get that firm pressure from a therapist's hands or a weighted vest, Tamor became calmer and more focused in other activities. So why exactly do these struggles happen? Why is it so hard for children with autism to process sensory input like others? The answer lies in the brain. The way a brain of a child with autism processes sensory information is different from the typical brain. In a typical brain, sensory signals are processed through specific pathways, which help filter out and organize information we receive. These pathways help us focus on what is important, like the voice of a teacher speaking to us, while ignoring less relevant stimuli like the hum of a fan in the background. However, in children with autism, these pathways might be underactive, overactive, or may not be connected properly. As a result, their brains may misinterpret or become overwhelmed by sensory input. Some research suggests that the sensory processing pathways in children with autism are less efficient at filtering and integrating sensory information. This makes it harder for them to ignore irrelevant stimuli or react appropriately to certain sensory experiences. In addition, children with autism often struggle with sensory modulation. This means their brain can't adjust its response to the sensory input in a balanced way. For example, they might react strongly to a loud noise like covering their ears or having a meltdown, but not respond enough to an injury like not noticing when they're in pain. This imbalance makes daily life challenging for them. Sensory processing struggles can affect nearly every part of a child's life, from school to playtime and even at home. For instance, a child who is oversensitive to touch might refuse to wear certain clothes or may even experience distress when someone hugs them. A child who is sensitive to light or noise might avoid going to a busy store or a crowded school hallway. Take Alia, a 6-year-old girl we worked with. She was extremely sensitive to textures, especially when it came to clothing. She refused to wear anything except soft, smooth fabrics. No jeans, no dresses with lace, no shoes that weren't cushioned. This created a lot of stress in the mornings as her parents tried to get her ready for school. They would become frustrated and Alia would become anxious. Through gradual techniques to desensitize Alia through occupational therapy, we exposed her to different fabrics step by step. This approach helped her wear a variety of clothes without distress, and her sensory tolerance improved significantly over time. These sensory struggles can also impact social interactions. Children might avoid playing with other kids because the environment is too overwhelming, or they might not be able to express how they feel because they're unable to handle the sensory stimuli around them. This can lead to isolation or frustration. So what can we do to help children with sensory processing struggles? Fortunately, there are a lot of strategies and therapies that can make a huge difference. Occupational therapy is one of the most effective interventions for sensory processing challenges. Occupational therapists trained in sensory integration can work with children on specific exercises and activities designed to help them process sensory input in a more manageable way. For example, activities might include things like using swings for vestibular input or brushing therapy to provide calming sensory stimulation. At home or in school, we can create a sensory-friendly environment. This can include noise-canceling headphones, dimming bright lights, providing fidget tools, or offering sensory breaks throughout the day. A quiet corner in the classroom or home can help a child calm down when they feel overwhelmed. Self-regulation techniques are also useful. Encouraging a child to take slow, deep breaths or engage in simple exercises like stretching or jumping on a trampoline can help them reset their sensory system. Sensory processing difficulties can be a significant challenge for children with autism, but with the right understanding and support, they can learn to manage their sensory needs and thrive. It's not always easy, but with patience and consistent effort, children can find ways to feel more comfortable in the world around them. Whether it's through therapy, environmental adjustments, or self-regulation strategies, there are many tools that can help them better navigate their day-to-day experiences and feel more in control. If you're a parent or educator working with a child who struggles with sensory processing, remember, each child is unique. Their sensory needs, triggers, and preferences will vary, so it's important to observe them closely. Building a plan that addresses their specific needs can make a world of difference. With the right strategies in place, children can gain the confidence they need to succeed in school, at home, and in social situations. Thank you for watching today. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others. And don't forget to subscribe for more tips and insights on supporting children with challenges. Together, we can continue to learn and grow in ways that create positive changes for these children. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.